to announce that the superintendent, Dr. Sharon Contreras, will be leaving the district and will become the new CEO of the Innovation Project. It has been an incredible privilege to work alongside Dr. Contreras for the last 5.5 years. A superintendent of her caliber, her commitment, her dedication, her passion to children, her courageous and bold leadership will be incredibly difficult to replace. We value the work that she has done in this district under unprecedented circumstances, and yet still moved us forward. We know that she will continue to work on behalf of public education, of children, of those who have been the most marginalized and left behind, in addition to caring for and improving the educational environment for all students. We know that she will continue to do this work. And with that said, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Contreras.
Good afternoon, everyone. This morning, the Innovation Project, TIP, a nonprofit collaborative working group of innovative North Carolina school district superintendents and their teams, announced that I will lead the organization as the next CEO beginning in August 2022. I was appointed superintendent of Guilford County Schools in 2016 and have been a large district superintendent for nearly 11 years as a result of the Board of Education's strategic plan and their incredible leadership. We have strengthened principal instructional leadership and led pioneering initiatives to expand broadband connectivity to students without internet access. Our tutoring programs and learning hubs have received national acclaim, and we have created a principal pipeline for Black and Latino males so that our students see themselves in their leaders. We have increased the number of pathways for students to move forward to in-demand career fields through signature career academies and focused on comprehensive professional development to prevent human trafficking and sexual assault. At the onset of the pandemic, we were the first district in the state to open our schools for the children of first responders and for students in transition. In the past 6 years, we have graduated 11 students who are in residential detention. We have dramatically increased student participation in tuition-free dual enrollment programs, achieved a graduation rate of 91.5%, and set a district record with seniors earning more than $193 million in college scholarships and grants. This has been done because of the incredible sacrifices of the GCS team, the central office leadership, our building leadership led by the most dedicated principals I've ever worked with, our teachers, school nutrition workers, bus drivers, maintenance workers, ACES employees, and so many others. Nothing I've been given credit for as a leader could have been accomplished without them. I simply provided vision, and our equity warriors used all of their time, skill, and talent to eradicate the many enduring challenges and inequities too many of our students face, inequities exacerbated by the pandemic. I am grateful now to step into the role of CEO at TIP. TIP is an organization with an extraordinary legacy and significant human, social, and political capital. At TIP, we invite adults and children to think, act, and work in new ways to achieve outsized gains in student outcomes and eradicate racial achievement gaps that ultimately hold us all back from realizing our individual and collective potential. I cannot believe that I am blessed to have the opportunity to have a second dream job. I thank all of GCS's community partners who have been so generous with their support over these 5.5 years, the Guilford Education Alliance, the Chambers of Commerce, Ready, Say Yes Guilford, all of our partner agencies and organizations, the faith community, the municipalities, the Guilford County Sheriff and police chiefs of High Point and Greensboro. There are simply too many people and organizations to name individually. Most of all, I thank the parents for entrusting your children to us. and supporting us through this pandemic. To the students, I say what I always say. I love you, I believe in you, and I will never, ever give up on a single one of you. You are why we do this work. Keep making me proud. Thank you.
We will now open for questions, and Jansen has the mic.
I'll hold it.
Superintendent, has anything changed in the past year that you think makes the job of superintendent in any major school such as Guilford less attractive?
For superintendents in general, I think it's a much more difficult job than it's ever been. I think that's true for all of our staff, for teachers, principals, bus drivers. I think it's very complicated, very complex. The pandemic has made the job very complex, and I think that the community has to come together to solve some of the problems created by the pandemic instead of simply looking at school districts and saying this is a school district problem. I think that makes it much more difficult to keep educators in positions.
Obviously, this has been a tough 2 years across the country, especially for schools. And for you specifically, you've received some not so kind messages from people at times. Has any of this contributed to your decision to leave?
I think for me, this opportunity came up, and I looked around. Do we have the photo? Do you have that? I want to show that. I looked around recently at a photo of Jonathan, and it's the photo of the first day on the job when I took my oath. And then I looked at a photo of us last night, and I realized I'm caring so deeply for children. And I have a child that's about to go into high school. And at some point, we all have to make a decision about what's good for ourselves and our own family. And I just want to share that. That's 5.5 years ago. And that's last night. He's 6 feet tall. And so all of us have to make that sort of decision for ourselves. What's good for our families? And I think I want to spend a lot more time with him before he goes off to college. And for many of us, we spend a lot of time with our families and with children when they're in elementary school. And we think high school students don't need as much support, and that's just not true. And I want to spend as much time with him as possible as I work with my colleagues across the state. And many of them are new superintendents. I've been a superintendent for 11 years in a large district, which is almost unheard of. So there's a lot I have to offer them in helping them to make it through this pandemic. So it's a great role.
Superintendent, what will you miss the most about your current role? And in the years that you have been in this role, what are you most proud of?
What will I miss the most? And I missed the second part.
What are you most proud of?
What are you the most proud of?
So what I will miss the most, clearly, is the children. I love being around the students. I love being in the schools. And I think the work that I'm most proud of is the work that the Board of Education has done with the Board of County Commissioners to get the first bond passed, and seeing already the schematic designs for the first few schools. And I'm already proud because I am confident that this community believes in the schools, they believe in children, they support educators, that they're going to support this $1.7 billion bond referendum so that our students have great places to learn and our teachers have great places to teach. So I'm proud about the work we did with facilities.
Dr. Contreras, if I
Do you mind if I ask a question of Ms. Hayes and Ms. McGregor?
Oh, please, that's
Yeah.
what they're here for.
Ms. Hayes, Ms. McGregor, any thoughts on when the board might have a replacement for Dr. Contreras? And do you think it'll be this board or the board that comes into play in December after the election?
Well, as you can see, we're just now having this discussion, and I think the full board needs to have the opportunity to at least absorb this information and then have some conversation about a process.
And I'm still here through August.
Yeah, I'm grateful that Dr. Contreras has given us this length of a ramp to adjust and transition and to think and act really clearly so that we can continue the work that's happening. I would just add that when Dr. Contreras came almost 6 years ago, I was not on the Board of Ed, but I was at the Guilford Education Alliance. And at the time I said, her success depends as much on us as a community as it does her, and I believe that about all superintendents. And I have seen where this community, business, philanthropic leaders, parents, faith leaders, students, principals have poured into the success of our kids over the last 5.5, 6 years. And I think we do own the responsibility as a community to continue this work. Dr. Contreras has extraordinary vision, but I think what's most extraordinary about her is she actually is able to translate that vision into action and to call us and to show us how to take very concrete steps to move things forward. And she has taught us that we can move forward on things that almost seem daunting or too big to accomplish. And so we need to continue that work to own our responsibility, just like students who learn from great teachers, teachers who learn from great principals. We have learned a lot, and we can continue to move this work forward. And so I look forward to working with Dina and her leadership, our colleagues on the board, to bring in a strong leader, to create a transition that allows us to continue to really serve kids and to own this responsibility as a community, because the success of our kids is up to us. So,
Superintendent, any regrets, something you didn't achieve, or perhaps a mistake that you want to confess now?
Any regrets, anything that you didn't achieve, or any mistakes that you want to?
Yeah, well, anything that didn't go perfectly, I own. I don't blame that on anyone. As the leader, we have to own that. I think my biggest regret is that students still are not performing as well as they can and are not in a position where their lives will be transformed positively. And I've always said the only outcomes that really matter are life outcomes, not test scores, but the life outcomes of our students. And I want the district to be in a place that students are performing so well that they can leave here and choose the career that they are passionate about and walk into that career and live a decent life where they can take care of themselves and their families and contribute to the community, where they feel positive about themselves. I want them to be able to go to college if they choose and not have to take remedial courses. I want students to feel that any aspect of schooling is available to them, that they have access to all programs, and that they do not have to beg and plead to get into an honors class, an AP class, a dual enrollment class, band and chorus programs that have been, quite frankly, segregated by class and race in this district for many years, and in many schools that's still the case. I'm proud of the principals because every middle school now has advanced courses. That was not true when I first started. We have high rates of students in advanced placement classes, in international baccalaureate programs, and we're moving in the right direction. But still, too many students are not in a position where they will leave here and lead a high-quality life, lead a middle-class life. And that's a problem. That's not just a regret I have. That's a problem for this community, this state, and this nation.
Superintendent, we're halfway through the year, but why now?
Because this job opportunity became available.
Dr. Contreras, just first of all, congratulations, and you will be missed, and you've done a great job, and we appreciate you and everybody in their work.
Thank you.
But I wanted to ask you, it sounds like you want to take some of the platforms that you really were passionate about here to your next job. I don't know if there's anything else you could add to that, and just what you're going to focus on from here on out in regards to this district.
Just making sure there's a smooth transition and that we're able to keep schools open to the extent that we can during the pandemic, and that while the schools are open, that we can offer a high quality education and learning for parents. We're at a position right now where the schools are open, we're covering classes, but we're struggling to make sure that there's high quality teaching and learning occurring, because right now we're just covering classes. And we have to start thinking about that. Are there cases where an individual school has to close for a couple days? And are we in a position where our online platform is strong enough and the teachers are engaging enough with students, so whenever we have to close down for a day or two, those students are getting good quality teaching and are home learning? And so I want to focus on that so we don't have the situation we saw across the nation here in Guilford County, where for a year, teachers were trying to get used to technology, trying to get used to remote learning. Students were absent, devices and sharing devices, not knowing how to get online, and the learning loss has been massive. We don't want that for our students, so that's how I intend to spend much of the time with the principals and teachers, and again with the board, just helping to make sure there's a smooth transition.
And one more.
Superintendent, there is a group of candidates running for school board this year that says they want to focus their attention on critical race theory. And I'm wondering if you have anything to say to the community regarding CRT.
The same thing we've always said about CRT. I think it's a manufactured crisis. Schools don't teach, elementary, middle, high schools don't teach critical race theory. We struggle to even get schools to celebrate basic Black History Month, Hispanic History Month. So this whole movement to make Americans believe that they're at risk of critical race theory is manufactured. And I think that parents should get more involved in actually learning about what is taught in schools and about what is important. What do they want to be taught in schools? Because I do think that we want the truth to be taught and American history to be taught in its totality, world history to be taught in its totality. And we shouldn't allow something like CRT to be used as a code word to teach false information or to not teach our history in its fullness.
I'd
like to add something to that, because it's a political question about candidates, but it's posed to someone who's in not a political job. She's not elected, she's not a politician, but often gets sort of positioned that way. Dina and I work and play and choose to be in the political arena. So I think there will be a variety of candidates ultimately who run for the Board of Education. The filing period closed after a couple of days. It will reopen. So I don't think we've seen what's going to be on the whole plate of who will run for the Board of Ed. I would say that I think we need really high quality, experienced, community-oriented people to run for the Board of Ed, to understand what it means to provide good governance, to understand what is our job and what isn't our job. And so I would say I think the superintendent has done an extraordinary job of staying focused on kids and her job, while often being sort of attempted to be pulled into these political conversations and battles. She's adept, she's brilliant, she's good at responding, and yet it's not her calling to be a politician, right? she's the superintendent who's hired by an elected board. So I too would say that some of the political rhetoric in our community, that some of those candidates, obviously I'm not a part of that slate of candidates, is often, I think, detrimental to our children's futures. I disagree sometimes substantively and then often tactically. And so I think there are tactics at play that are not healthy. And again, what I have witnessed and seen, though, daily is broad support and positive action on the parts of students, parents, teachers, principals, pastors, business people, philanthropists who volunteer in schools, who build partnerships, who support our district leadership, and who have across superintendents. And I see that activity, but often what we do is to highlight sort of a negative voice or a particular tactic. So I do hope as we move forward as a community in this, we will resist that, and that we will take seriously many of the things that we've learned from Dr. Contreras. She's a teacher at heart, in my opinion. I learn something every day that I work with her. Reminds me in some cases of my 12th grade English teacher, Ms. Coffin, who was the hardest teacher I had, and I loved to hate her my senior year. And yet, at the age of 55, I use things every day that I learned from Ms. Coffin. I have loved every day of working with Sharon outside of the Board of Ed and as a Board of Ed member. And I want to say publicly how grateful all of those folks are for your leadership and for what you have poured into this community and will continue to pour into kids as you move forward. Thank you.
And I'd like to say in closing that as the media is here and you have an enormous responsibility as you are translating and communicating information out to our broader community, that our core values include diversity and equity. We have a school district that is largely of color, poor, and the lowest performing students in this district. And there's a political agenda being driven by a demographic that has not stood up for or addressed the experiences those students are having. We created the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion shortly after I came on the board in 2004. And since then, we have seen a strong coalition, a strong multiracial coalition of people who are working together with a shared understanding of parts of our history that are hurtful and painful, but nonetheless accurate. And people who have a shared language and have a shared understanding can work together effectively to solve some of the complex problems that we have. So I encourage and support any efforts to be very responsible in the way that information is shared and broadcast out to our community, because we need to be united. We do not need the kind of divisiveness. It would be great if there was an invitation to have a discussion about something that people are attempting to ban, which is just absurd. That we are attempting to, eliminate something we have never, ever, ever discussed. And so I hope that we will all bring our best selves to this problem, because it can set us back. And who is going to be harmed are our children and ultimately our community.
I lied. We do have one more, and that's it, I promise.
I wanted to ask of the group that you're looking to lead now. One, I'm curious if you might say some examples, if there are any, of how they have helped you as a superintendent here. And also, when you go with them, what do you expect or hope to do? What kind of mark do you look to put on that organization?
So I am a new member of the organization. I think the Guilford County has been a member for a year. And what is most beneficial is the collaboration and the presentation of new practices from around the state, from other districts, and from across the nation. Because I have experiences from different states, and I also am a participant in many different networks from across the country, I think I can introduce some of that to my colleagues, in addition to what they have already shared with me to help me be a better superintendent. So the point again, the mission of the organization, the vision is to be innovative, so that we can improve outcomes for students and end racial inequity in schools. And that's something that each of us works on individually in our home districts, but together we are far smarter and much stronger.
Thank you so much.